Heather Slesser. So my name is Heather Slesser. I apologize for the scratchiness. My husband was kind enough to share his cold with me. So you get to endure this, but I won't be talking for long. I am the chair of the Sustainable Agriculture Committee, and today we have asked past presenters to discuss with you their presentation topics and why they chose the Sustainable Agriculture Committee to submit those presentations to speak with or to speak at the AMPICs. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I am going to turn it over to Dwayne Joseph, Donna Gentry, Mark Bailey, and Shelley Mills. Okay. So Dwayne, you should see, do you see in the slides
Yep,
okay?
yep, I'm seeing it. Did you guys hear me correctly? Good. Okay. Awesome. So thanks, Heather. My name, like Heather said, is Dwayne Joseph. I'm the Extension Ag Agent here in Kent County, Maryland. So this past AMPIC, I presented on just some of my work. I have two research projects that kind of tie into each other, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to present it. A lot of my work looks at ways that we could reduce herbicide inputs in vegetable management systems. So that's kind of what I presented on. And I'll just briefly, in the next couple of minutes, just go through a couple of slides, kind of highlighting what exactly I spoke about and why I think it was a good idea to submit it to the Sustainable Ag presentations. So being trained as a weed scientist, a lot of my work kind of looks at different ways in which we can manage weeds, right? And a lot of us here are in ag, so we kind of know exactly what integrated weed management is. But in our research, we kind of look at it as a holistic approach to managing weeds, right? And by doing so, we use multiple control techniques. And the main reason why we do that is to basically try to reduce the reliance on herbicides because of the evolution of herbicide resistance in weeds. So my work kind of doesn't completely eliminate chemicals and herbicides, but it kind of reduces it. And we kind of look at other methods to kind of complement those techniques so that we could have a whole holistic type of approach. You could advance this slide, please. So if you're a farmer or if you garden or whatever you do in agriculture, there are two main areas that are important when it comes to weed management, right? Especially in vegetable systems where, you know, you need to control weeds either between the row or within the row. And for obvious reasons, you know, you have to control those weeds differently. You know, within the row, you have the crop growing right there. So you would have to use a different approach than between the row where, you know, most of the time it's bare ground. So my research kind of looks at kind of marrying or putting these, you know, two different approaches together into a program or into a system that, you know, we could use into a system that we could recommend to growers and to anyone who's trying to, you know, get into farming. You could advance, please. So in our research, we use cover crops, especially here in the mid-Atlantic. We're blessed with the climate to, you know, have a good grow cover crops basically. So in our research, we use cover crops, and we use them in different ways to manage weeds, right? So like I mentioned earlier, we use them in one way to manage weeds within the row, and we use them in another way to manage weeds between the row. And in the research that I presented this last AMPIC, I kind of use two main cover crops. One is cereal rye and the other is red clover. Next slide, please. So we use these cover crops in different ways, right? So we like using red clover as a living mulch. And we like to put it in between the rows. So whatever background space that's between rows, we like to grow it with a red clover. And the reason why we use red clover is for a number of reasons, right? We could have continuous weed management throughout the season. So while the crop is growing, the cover crop is growing also, and that provides weed management. It suppresses weeds. We normally like to grow plant our cover crops in the fall so that in the spring they would be come up way before those summer weeds come out. So again, that would give them advantage of covering the ground before the weeds kind of exploit it. Um, Another way which we use our cover crops is as a dyeing mulch. So with cereal rye, um, again, we seed them in the fall, and then by springtime, when it's time to terminate, when it's time to grow, um, we have again in the mid-Atlantic, we have those climates that are very conducive for good biomass accumulation from cereal rye. So what we do is we terminate that cereal rye by either roller crimping it or via herbicides. Some people even mow it, but we try to stay away from that because it kind of breaks down the mulch too quickly. And what we do with that is by that biomass laying on the ground, it suppresses weeds, it prevents any stimuli from, the sun getting down onto the soil and allowing those weeds to emerge. Quickly in our project, what we do is for between the row, we like to grow living mulch, like I said previously. And within the row, we like to grow our cereal rice. So what it would look like is if you look at that picture on the left, within the row, here we using plastic to cover the row, but in other systems where we would grow alternating rows of cereal rice. So where you see the plastic, we grow cereal rye in the fall, and then by spring we would just come and roll a crimp, and then we have that nice thick cereal rye mulch on the ground, and then we could direct transplant straight into that. Um, ad- Advanced slide, please. So another method, which it's kind of neat, this method that we're looking at or evaluating, I should say. It's something that's been around for a while, but it's been shelved. A lot of people kind of shelved it back in the 50s. But it's called biosolarization. And what that is basically it's a soil disinfection technique that's pretty similar to solarization, but the main difference is that you use a soil amendment. So you amend the soil with an organic substance. So in our case, we're looking at using grape pomace and apple pomace. And what that is it's the byproduct of um, fruit processing. So it's basically fruit processing waste. So after they squeeze those grapes, after they squeeze or crush those apples, whatever is going to go in the compost pile, we go ahead and grab it, we dry it out in the greenhouses, and then we apply it to the soil. So if you look at the pictures on the left, at the top, that would be wet. At the bottom would be what it looks like dry. And on the right, at the top is kind of what it looks like when we lay it down in the row. So within the row is where you kind of strip till. Between the row, you can't see it here, but we have red clover in there. It will come back very vigorously as the season progresses. And then we would till in that pomace. We would cover it with a plastic tarp. Also have drip tape under it, keep it wet, and we let the sun do its work. So in about 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how much sun we get or the temperatures we get, what happens is research has shown that biosolarization, that those little chemicals are released into the soil, and that inactivates weed seeds, so that prevents them from germinating. After those 2 weeks, after that process has run its course, you take the plastic off, and then you can transplant straight into that row. We've seen with our research that this controls weeds, so it's very promising. And we have a couple more. We have one more round of research to go, but it's looking pretty promising, and we could start basically recommending it to different growers, specialty crop growers in our area. Next slide, please. So this is my final slide. So kind of going through why did I decide to submit to the Sustainable Ag presentations, right? So one, it's a good fit for my current research. So a lot of the work I do falls under sustainable agriculture, sustainable practices. Also, it's an opportunity to present my work to colleagues, right? So I think all of us here are in extension. So, you know, a lot of our work kind of, we don't really speak to colleagues that much. We always present to, you know, ag professionals, we present to others. So I found this was a great opportunity to present to colleagues. I got some good feedback from them when I presented, so I really appreciated that. Also, it's an opportunity to travel. This last NACAA was in Dallas. I lived in Texas for a while, so it wasn't really exciting, but I know this year's Montana, so I'm kind of looking forward to that. So it's a great opportunity to travel. To go out there, you travel, you present your work. Um, and also it's a great addition to your CV, right? So if you're like me and you know, in line for promotion or tenure, it's a great way, you know, to fill up your CV to show that you presented your work to colleagues. So with that, I think that's my last slide. So I guess we're taking questions at the end, Heather, or if anybody has questions, my contact information is right there. You could email me or ask me a question later. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Dwayne. We'll take questions at the end just so we can make sure everybody has a chance to talk.
Hello, I'm Donna Gentry. I'm the coordinator for the Louisiana Master Farmer Program out of Louisiana. And I want to kind of talk to you a little bit about why I chose this presentation for the Sustainable Ag session. Okay. So what I presented is something that I've been working in for over 20 years. It's, again, the Louisiana Master Farmer Program. And what I presented was conservation through education, demonstration, and implementation. And what I meant by that is there's 3 phases to this program. One is classroom, which is the education component. The second phase is demonstration of conservation practices. And phase 3 is the implementation phase, where you're actually implementing necessary practices on your own farm. So that's what that means by those 3 words: education, demonstration, and implementation. So, you know, there's a lot of different ways that you can talk about sustainable agriculture and definitions. For me, and this is, you know, like I said, it's a lot of different things that you can look at. These are actually the practices that are going to protect the environment. It's going to keep our natural resource base or expand them, maintain and improve soil fertility, and also increase profitable farm income. Because as we know, you know, farmers and growers are not going to implement these practices if at some point it doesn't save them money or make them money in the end. And also to promote environmental stewardship. So these are some of the things, some of the goals of what I consider sustainable agriculture. So for me personally, why did I choose to submit this presentation into the Sustainable Ag topic? I serve as the chair for the Sustainable Ag Committee in Louisiana. So over the years, I've seen different oral and poster presentations that have been submitted, not just from Louisiana, from other states. So, you know, I've been around enough to know that, you know, kind of what other people were presenting and kind of what areas within sustainable ag that they were concentrating on. For me personally, my background is environmental stewardship. It is soil, plant, and environmental systems. My research for my graduate work focused on cover crops and the impact they had on production. But I currently work with a lot of other research within the LSU Ag Center and LSU University that are working on soil health and sustainability projects, water quality projects, and things like that. So my whole entire job pretty much is working in that environment. So I really felt like what we were doing in the program would be a good fit for this topic. Okay. So why do I think that my topic again fits into the sustainable ag? The program is a sustainably focused environmental stewardship program. That's what it's been. It began in 2001, and it's, around this particular area of environmental stewardship, improving water quality as it relates to production agriculture. Again, there's different components to it. LSU and the LSU Ag Center are under the higher education umbrella. We're an educational institution. We're not regulatory. So this is a voluntary program. It doesn't cost anything to participate. And we push the voluntary side of it because, as we know, growers are not real keen into doing something because they have to. So we want to promote that, hey, at this point, it's still voluntary. We hope that it stays that way, but we do recognize that other states have got a lot of involuntary regulations, and we want to try to get ahead of that or stay ahead of that. So one thing about our program that's a little bit different is we offer a certification component. This is done through all of the program partners, including the Louisiana Department of Ag and Forestry, that actually certifies the producers once they've completed all the required phases. So again, sustainable ag can cover a lot of different topics, improve water quality, specific BMPs that target different things like erosion. You're increasing your microbial populations and things like that, conserving natural resources. So all of these things exactly fit into what the Louisiana Master Farmer Program does. We're an educational program, but there is a certification component to it. And it encompasses all of these things to help the grower or producer be more sustainable, keep the land in as good a shape or better for future generations, keep the water clean, keep the soil healthy, and things like that. So that's what we promote, and we help assist them in getting certified. That's okay. And I just kind of threw this in there as a side piece, but the way I do my presentations, or the way I try to do, is to try to get as much information in there as I can in kind of a certain format so it's easy to understand. So I kind of look at what was the history behind what caused the program to be developed, the project to be implemented, publication to be written, and things like that. So why was this program developed? What was the need for it? Okay, so I say, like, how did we get here? And I look at the different things in Louisiana. We look at our land use map, things like that. So for me, that's kind of how I start this. You can go to the next slide. And then I try to answer the questions of like who, what, where, when, and how. That's kind of how I approach things. That I think that gives people a good general idea of the different aspects of the program and what we try to get across, to our growers. So I look at who developed the program. And these are some of the questions I think people that we present this to would want to ask. They would want to know the answers. Who is our target audience? Who can participate? So what's the program about? What's the requirements of this certification? And in the end, what is the impact of this program on Louisiana agriculture, on our soil health, on our production, on our water quality? Where is the program offered? Where can you get more information? When is it offered? When can you reach certification? I mean, these are all the questions. And how to maintain that certification. So again, how does the program affect conservation quality efforts and water quality efforts in Louisiana? And we've got the numbers to back that up because we document everything. Okay. So the main thing at the end of this is why is this program important? There's a lot of different educational, conservation programs out there across the country. I've looked up a lot of them. I've talked to people about them. I guess one that makes ours different is, again, there is a certification, but it's a voluntary, proactive approach to dealing with environmental issues related to water quality and soil health in our state. We know that, water quality is not going to improve, soil health is not going to improve until people actually start implementing these practices. It's great to learn about it, but until you start putting this into practice, it's really not going to improve anything. So, that is the goal. And we want to keep regulation at bay if at all possible. Okay. One other thing that our program has, about 20 years ago, the Louisiana legislature passed what's called a presumption of compliance. And what it means is that if a producer, grower, landowner completes all the requirements, the education, the demonstration, actually has a conservation plan developed and implemented on their entire farm, they're in presumed compliance of our state soil and water quality requirements. So it's like a little bit of an insurance policy. Now, that's not to say that it would protect you 100%, but what we try to see is even the legislators and all these other groups are supporting the program. They know it's important. They know it can have a real impact, on our state with regards to water quality and things like that. So we do have that, and we do talk about the importance of that to our growers as well. Go ahead. And then again, we try to give them as much information as we can. We've got, Facebook, we've got a website, and we keep these up to date. Anything we can do to not only promote conservation and water quality improvements in our state, but also assist these people in getting the funding they need, possibly through NRCS, and also assisting with their conservation plans. So that's what we do as a program, as the faculty working in the program. And luckily, over the 20 plus years, we've gotten a lot of support. So all that being said, that this program is centered around environmental stewardship. It's centered around helping producers be more sustainable, for the future. And I thought it was a really good fit for this particular topic at the national meeting. And as the previous speaker said, also, we're pushed a lot of times by administration to, get out of our comfort zone, get out of just the state meetings, go to national conferences. And I think the NACAA is an absolute great opportunity to do that, because you are among your peers around the country. You're meeting a lot of people, you're networking, and you're also seeing what other people are doing. I love to listen to what other people's presentations are like. Hey, that might be something I can use in my own program or my own extension office. So it's good for me because I can take all that back with me. And I hope that I'm giving that to other people that are attending the meeting as well. So, and this is our contact information, and I appreciate you letting me talk this morning.
All right. Are we ready to go? All right, very good. So my name is Martin Bailey, and I am one of the sustainable agriculture agents here in Florida, specifically Marion County, which is kind of north central Florida, just south of Gainesville a little bit. And the reason why I think that this topic of passion fruit, an emerging crop in Florida, is directly relevant to sustainable agriculture, not just here in Florida, but also across all states, is that we need to look at our farms as not just being a farm that produces something, but in terms of like sustainable agriculture, we also need to be thinking in terms of economic sustainability as well. All farms, as far as I'm familiar with, are run based upon hopefully they're in the black and not in the red. And it's very important that we look at the economic sustainability as well as the production sustainability of anything we recommend. So you see here in this picture here, it's kind of a linear fashion from left to right. You have a little trellis wire in the background. You have a beautiful passion fruit flower. And then you have the fruit that are developed. They're not quite ripe there. Then you have the fruit on the right-hand side. And the reason why I focused on this topic so much, and we have a lot of grant funding for this, and the reason why I brought it to NACAA is a lot of farms across the Southeast are, they're kind of polarizing in the sense that we have either really huge farms or we have increasing numbers of very small farms that are less than, say, 100 acres, less than $500,000 in revenue. So we're kind of seeing an inverse bell curve. And so I've basically been tasked with a lot of my growers of saying, hey, I only have 20 acres and I can't make a living off of peanuts, and I don't have a whole lot of capital. What can I grow on small acreage that allow me to keep my land in farmland? And it needs to be something that is not a saturated market, because you're not going to make a living off of a few acres of wheat or peanuts, So basically, I've narrowed it down to passion fruit as being a crop for small acreage. And a lot of the growers said to me, like, okay, well, I'm not really familiar with this crop. Tell me about this crop. But before you do, tell me about the marketing aspects as well. Who's buying it? When? Where? How? Is it juiced? Is it a fresh product? Is it, how do you people selling it? Who's buying it? What time of year? So those are all the kind of questions they needed to know. And I've helped develop a lot of materials, publications, and also quite a bit of research to support those questions. Next slide, please. We'll go kind of rapid fire after these questions pretty quickly. All right, so this is the overview for the plan. Again, we're not just talking about the production side, but we're also talking about the marketing. So I'll go through it very quickly. So the first task is to develop a reliable and sustainable production recommendations or practices. These include propagation, planting, trellising, fertilizing, cultural management, and IPM. So this is all the production side. And the rubber meets the road when hopefully you're making sales. And the second part is developing harvest and post-harvest handling. What is their shelf life? How do we preserve the shelf life? How do we process them? And the third one is developing marketing recommendations for small scale and large scale growers. So what we discovered was a lot of the large scale growers actually stopped me mid-conversation. They said, okay, that's interesting about passion fruit, but tell me all about the marketing first. And I was like, this is 5-6 years ago. And I was like, well, we have some basic information from Hawaii, maybe from like Puerto Rico. And so I've spent a lot of time and effort to develop marketing information. And the marketing information, this is true for all the rest of the lower 48, including Hawaii, is your marketing information. If you're planting a new crop, should tell you what you should or should not plant. If there's not a market for it, if you haven't done your market research, you don't want to be betting the farm on an unproven crop for your area. And so that's a major aspect of sustainable agriculture is, again, the economic aspect needs to be considered very seriously, especially for new crops. Next slide, please. So here's an example of sort of the process that I show my growers. This is an actual demonstration area in a little town of Citra, Florida, the plant science unit here in Marion County. And we show people like in person the entire process from plant selection, planting, irrigation, weed suppression, and trellising. And then we even show them the harvest and post-harvest process. Let's go ahead and continue, please. So this is an example. This is about 1 year later. And these are about 40 plants on about 1/10 of an acre. And this is under high tunnel. So we have a lot of extreme weather conditions in Florida. It's not a joke. One day it was 90 degrees, and the next day it was 40 degrees within 24 hours. So we have some pretty extremes in north central Florida. South and central Florida are very different weather conditions. And so high tunnel is a great option for sustainable agriculture. It controls a lot of variables that we have here in Florida. It also keeps fungicide and insecticide residues on there longer, which then reduces the amount and frequency that we need to apply as well. So this right here is a picture on the right-hand side of one of our first growers in north central Florida. And they use T-poster trellis. There's no really perfect way to design a trellis, but you can see the beautiful unripe fruit hanging underneath is quite aesthetically pleasing. So there is not just purely the fruit, but there's also some agritourism components. And this is actually an agritourism farm this was first planted on. Left-hand side, simple fertilization recommendations. It's based upon basically the age of the vine. They only live about 3 to 4 years, but you're going to scale it up and then it plateaus after a period of time. Next slide, please. So as you may know, pest control is a big problem for most crops, and that's certainly the case for passion fruit. And passion fruit does have a range of bacteria, especially fungi, and the most important one are going to be viruses. We don't have really many significant insect pests that actually kill or harm the vines, but a major problem is viruses. And in South Florida, it never really freezes. You never have a reset on the aphid and leafhopper and other kinds of populations. But in North Florida, I mean, right now it's around 35 or so degrees, and that wipes out the vast majority of the vectors for the viruses. So that's an example of how we've shifted production interest almost 250 miles north to kind of get away from the endemic presence of viruses and the vectors that transmit it. So one big factor, though, I mentioned the 90 degrees down to 40 degrees in a single a single day. Cold weather is a significant challenge. It looks really terrible on the right-hand side, but I will tell you that 100% of those vines came back so long as you protect the vines at the bottom. So we have a completely comprehensive approach to production in our programs and our field demonstrations. And so basically what I did is I wrote down a list of all the concerns they have, all the concerns that our researchers that I work with have as well. And we developed basically our presentations based upon the concerns from the growers themselves. This is a quick picture of a pollination process. Carpenter bees and bumblebees are particularly suitable for pollinating. And if you look very carefully, you can actually see tiny little golden pollen grains picked up and is actually pollinating one of the passion flowers. So new fruit development, the pollination stage is very important. You can see that it goes from a flower. The flower residue drops off very quickly once pollinated. Within about 2 days, it's completely gone. The fruit, the ovum swells, and then you know it's ready to go when it begins to change color. And these naturally drop off. It's one of the very few fruit in the world, not only that drop off, but also you're allowed to harvest these off the ground. And they have a shelf life, you want to call it a ground life, for about 2 or so weeks. You can harvest them after they've fallen off the ground. They're quite durable. If you haven't had a fresh passion fruit, they have a durability of almost a racquetball. So basically, I talk about all the details of from production side to fruit development and all of that. All right, so another quick slide on fruit development. The fruit itself is sometimes people are concerned about the fruit wrinkling and shrinking. That is perfectly fine. The sugar content stays the same. The moisture content drops a little bit, but the fruit is viable inside and actually tastes even better when it's slightly dimpled. So that's actually a good thing. And I did a survey for people. The Hispanic population in Florida is much more familiar with passion fruit than other populations. And in many cases, they prefer finding wrinkled fruit. So it depends on your marketing. Who you're marketing to will tell you how to store your fruit. So talk more about the harvesting process. It's picked off the ground, etc. And we give some demonstrations about that in our field. Go ahead next, please. So this is in the lab. This shows the slight variability in color. They're all about the uniform shape overall. The size does vary to some extent. And size, when I did my surveys, which I'll get into very briefly, was not a major factor because these are so full of flavor that any one of these has roughly almost the same amount of flavor density, if you will. A very strong flavor to them. So the processing, flavor, nutrition are quite important. Many of you are familiar with how blueberries are marketed for their antioxidant content, and that was a deliberate effort Growers Associations made, and that was an inspiration for looking into the nutrient content of passion fruit. It's not just how to grow it, and we are using the nutrient content as a marketing aspect because these are really high in antioxidants, things like vitamin C, carotenoids, flavonoids, and also has a mild sedative effect as well. I'll go ahead and continue. After that, one more. So let's go. So again, this is sort of a second part of it. I'll be very quick. Go ahead and next slide, please. Thank you. All right, so we're not going to get into all this, but this is a model that can be applied to not only passion fruit, but to any kind of new fruit, new variety onto either a farm or a new crop for an entire region. So we talk about the key partners, the growers, cooperating with the researchers, understanding who's involved in transportation, processing. We need to talk with all those people first to see if they're able to get all those ducks in a row. We looked into the key activities, basically have really high quality recommendations for how to produce it. Look into the key resources. Also need to consider the value propositions. What's in it for a grower? What are they going to get out of it? Okay. What's in it for wholesalers? What's in it for consumers? So we have all that information available in our presentations. Develop customer relationships. Also the channels for from production all the way to basically to money to sales, and that is facilitated with a lot of communication. We have to talk with a lot of people and help them get familiar with this fruit all the way to the consumer. And then we talk about the customer segments involved. Go back very briefly. The growers, packers, processors, grocery stores, and buyers, those are all very, very important. And we talk about the revenue streams. All right, next slide. But this model is, it can be applied again for almost any kind of a crop out there. So the revenue streams, we went over those, direct to customers, all the way to wholesale, all the way to online internet sales. I was about 2/3 of the growers in Florida already are selling through the internet, and they're making between $22 to $35 a pound. So pretty attractive. Go next, please. This is an example of the marketing. Next slide. We have the fresh fruit, the juice. We asked people, this is the marketing aspect, have they had fresh passion fruit before? 51% said yes, 54% said no. Then we rated a bunch of different qualities: taste, texture, flavor, aroma, appearance, size, price point. And this is the overall summary slide that people liked it very much. So I then take this information and bring it to prospective growers and say, yes, a market does exist. And our final end number was like a 250. This is again, this is the last year's information. We've got 250 survey participants, and we have the results. Next slide. And then I finally asked, would you buy Florida grown passion fruit if it was available? And 93% said yes. So we have very solid information. We also have price points. And that is very, very important for growers who are risking a lot of time and a lot of money. And we want to have them informed and make wise decisions before they implement it. And for some farms, it's not best for them because it is labor intensive. And other farms, they're planting as we speak. And so we have a program survey. We're always trying to collect survey information from our growers. And we've had 2 or 3 large field days. And we've had people from all over, not only Florida, also the Southeast and across the world. We had, I think, 6 different countries represented at our passion fruit program. So that's why I think that it deserved to be in the NACAA Sustainable Ag section. And if you have any questions, look forward to answering them at the end. Thank you.
Okay, I guess it's my turn. So I'm Shelley Mills. I'm with the Montana State University Extension, and I am located in Northeast Montana. I am also the chair of the Montana Planning Committee for the 2025 AMPIC, and I would like to invite you all to come to Montana. We've got a great program scheduled for you, and we're super excited about it. So next slide, please. Wendy Becker, by the way, is my fellow agent. I sucked her into the beekeeping realm in 2016 when I started teaching beekeeping, and we call ourselves the bee team now. So I got into beekeeping just like any other extension agent gets into a program. We had a lot of questions in my office. We identified that there was a need to have beekeeping education and outreach. A lot of people are interested in becoming hobbyists and having bees on their property. So we decided, okay, let's do what Extension does, and we outlined our educational objectives. We developed our curriculum. I attended the Master Beekeeping Certification Program through the University of Montana, which is our other sister university in the state, and became a master beekeeper. Bought bees and started keeping bees and teaching classes in how to keep bees. When I sucked Wendy in, we decided that we needed to spread it out across the state because a lot of people were calling us from other parts of the state than just this Northeast region of the state. And so we hit the road and started talking about different topics. And one of the things that we talk about, we started out with day-long sessions and then decided, no, that's way too much information. People were struggling. So we cut it back and just focused on the real basics of, what is the honeybee biology and basically honeybees 101. Then we talk about the equipment you need and how much it's going to cost. Then we also talk about planting for pollinators, not just honeybees, but any pollinator. And finally, we stole a presentation that was given at one of the national conferences by Keith Fielder called Top 10 Newbie Mistakes. And it's helping a lot of people decide whether or not they want to get into bees. So my take on this presentation is just a little bit different than everybody else's. So that's in a nutshell our program. I did want to say that I got an instructional innovation grant to put up 5 beekeeping colonies where I do hands-on instructional education classes. And we also have worked closely with the Fort Peck tribes to put honeybees on there as learning facilities as well. So, and then of course, evaluation, that's part of the program. But my tactic for today's topic was more about, you know, why is it sustainable agriculture, and what is it about sustainable agriculture that people are missing? I really think they're really missing the point in this, because sustainable agriculture, of course, is about environmental quality, and we've all touched on that. It's all about you know, improving our environment, improving our water, things like that. But it's also about enhancing human needs and sustaining profitability and improving our quality of life. So it's so much more than what we just think of as sustainable agriculture. And I was the state coordinator for Western SARE professional development grants for several years. And so this is kind of their take on what sustainable agriculture is. And it taught me so much about what Extension does and how Extension fits in so many different areas and into sustainable agriculture. So next slide, please. So of course, we talk about environmental sustainability. All 4 of us have talked about environmental sustainability, and of course, improving our soil quality, our health, and also water quality. And then of course, where my subject fit in was pollinators and landscape diversity and ecological services. But when you think about sustainability, it's not just that. It can be other things. So let's look at the next slide, please. It's also economic stability. So it's improving our bottom line, increasing our profits, having better marketability, finding new markets, just like Mark was talking about, finding a new product and a new market that will help sustain our farming and our farming families. But also, next slide, please. It's about production and production efficiency. So based on the 1970s versus the 2020s, the cattle that we raise today have more meat per animal production than they did in the 70s. And that's just all part of that sustainability. And when we take no-till practices and move to continuous cropping, rotational agriculture, we can break those pest cycles like this wheat stem sawfly that we see in the lower right corner here. And we can improve our soil health and so many different things. So it's just, I get so excited about sustainable agriculture because it can be so many different things. Yield per animal or yield per unit of land, reducing our pesticide use, reducing our fertilizers, being more in tune with our environment, and making sure that our farmers have a good economic balance. Next slide, please. But in addition to that, it's also social sustainability. It's improving our food systems, improving our infrastructure for food systems, making food accessible and local foods accessible. So in Montana, we have a lot of this farm to school program where we raise the beef that they eat in the schools, making sure that underserved communities are serviced, and improving our bottom line and our quality of life, making sure that we have satisfaction with what we do in our lives, and strengthening our rural and urban communities. Next slide, please. So my bottom line is, don't limit your thinking when it comes to sustainable practices. Extension programming that helps sustain people as well as the environment applies here. It's what Extension does. And I apologize, I did not put my contact information in there, but it's just smills@montana.edu, and Montana's all spelled out. So thanks.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. I guess at this time I'll open it up if anybody has questions, even if the other presenters have questions of the other presenters, that'd be great.
I guess I would have a question to the people that are participating today. If they have already given a presentation at the NACAA meeting, maybe in another topic, is this just something that's like, hey, I'm thinking about this one, but I've already done one, or these are all brand new people, that are thinking about giving one? Just curious.
They're all being shy. Well, I know Katie's on the Sustainable Agriculture Committee with me. And so I know she does a lot of hort work. So I think Katie has probably presented in horticulture. So Connie says she's given one in other areas. Oh, Katie unmuted, so I'll let her talk.
Yeah, I've also given several in horticulture, and a lot of the reasons you listed, I heard somebody else mention about promotion and tenure. So we have a non-tenure track, so that really helped me go through the process. And I have to admit, from last year, I gave a presentation in horticulture, and I got a lot of contacts from people back asking for the information I presented and looking at doing it in their states. So just a great networking opportunity.
In my case, because my job title does say sustainable agriculture, I usually, from the past almost 8 or 9 years now, I pretty much relegate myself to the sustainable area. However, you got me thinking a little bit, because I also co-run a statewide program for Florida on edible landscaping. So that's within horticulture. So if y'all have any questions on developing statewide programs for edible landscaping, definitely let me know. And we're aggressively working with counties, county governments, county parks, schools, hospitals, you name it. It's expanding very rapidly.
Sounds exciting. So, Timothy says that he has given a few as well. So
Gotcha.
It's been in the horticulture turf grass end of it, which is what I'm more into.
yeah, and
Okay.
I've presented once, and it was in animal science. So, and I know after today's conversation, I'm not gonna lie, with your Shelley, with your conversation piece about the production and that being sustainable, how we're producing more, I'm thinking one of the topics that I was thinking I might put in for animal science this year, I might actually switch to sustainable ag. So thank you for that.
I have a question for Mark. Mark, what is it only one type of cultivar of passion fruit that's been grown in Florida, or are there different types?
All
The
right,
reason
great.
I ask is because I the ones I saw you have looks, when they're ripe, they're purple, right? I know there's some that turn yellow.
Yes, great question. So last year at NACA, I presented the prior year's research, like 22 years research, because it takes time to publish everything. And so this year, I intend to talk about comparing the sensory perceptions, which is related to marketing, of, I think, 3 to 5 different varieties. So some of them are small, maybe like ping pong size, and they're purple, and other ones are larger and they're kind of like an orange and yellow kind of color. They're all passion fruit, all passiflora, edulous, but we will be getting into the different varieties, and we're cross-referencing. Is it something that people want? They like the taste, texture, flavor, aroma. What are they willing to pay? And then, of course, the most important question is, will it grow? That particular cultivar, will it grow well in these conditions? So we're bringing these things together so we have a Venn diagram of, does it grow well? Is it sustainable production? Do people actually want to buy it? Because it may grow really well, people want to buy it, or people want to buy it, doesn't grow well. So it has to be both. It's a very systematic approach we're taking with all this. Oh, and one more point, that passion fruit is a close relative of Passiflora incarnata, the maypop, and its native range is from Texas to Pennsylvania, Virginia, all the way down to Florida, that triangle, everywhere in between. And because it can grow in that area, we are looking into high tunnel production into the Carolinas and possibly beyond. And I've also proven that passion fruit can survive down to 19 degrees Fahrenheit with no protection. A few more nuances to that, but it really opens up the territory that we can go passion fruit way beyond just the Miami-Dade area.
Other questions or comments for the speakers? Well, I personally want to thank you guys all for being on and being willing to share your presentation with us. Tell us a little bit about what you did and then why you chose sustainable ag. Really hoping that this will help spur some other people to submit to the committee. We'd like to get a robust amount of presentations. In the last couple of years, we've gotten more, but it'd be nice to have like 30 just to look through and, so no, I appreciate your time today. It's really valuable.
I appreciate being asked to be on here. And if anybody has any questions about any of the stuff that I do or I'm working with, I'll be glad to, email them or visit with them on the phone.
All right. Well, thank you guys, and I appreciate your time again, and I'll give you back 8 minutes of your life.
Thank you, Heather.
Well, thank you for the invitation.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you.
Thanks.